I'm Dru Stevenson, and this is a video for my law and economics seminar. And this is an introduction or overview for our unit about institutions or institutional law and economics. The first thing we're going to look at in this unit is the big picture perspective on the vital role that institutions play in our economy. In other words, healthy markets cannot function without institutions. A common example is the need for courts to enforce contracts and property rights, without which nobody would bother investing or transacting or buying property if they had no way of securing their rights or making the other party fulfill their obligations under the contract. And so the economy could not really function without courts. And the fact is, we have lots of examples of countries around the world, sort of failed states, if you will, where there isn't a healthy court system or one that has enough credibility in society to provide this function, and it has a severely detrimental effect on the economy. So we're going to watch a couple short lectures from economists about the vital role that institutions play in the economy in that sense. Now, institutions are necessary for enforcing contracts and property rights, which are the sort of foundations of free markets, but they also bring stability and predictability, enforcement mechanisms, like we said, but not just legal enforcement mechanisms. There are also informal social norms and reputational enforcement mechanisms that come through institutions. And institutions lower many types of transaction costs in the free market. They're important signaling devices. For example, institutions provide credentials to employees that they can show to prospective employers to convince the employer that they would be a good hire. Institutions set industry standards for quality and provide accountability. They provide lots of public service and public information, and they're very good at organizing people and building little communities and so forth. Now, the first few lectures we're going to cover really talk a lot about government institutions, and I think that it's easy for people to see why those are necessary for the functioning of a free market. In other words, free markets break down very quickly in a state of anarchy. And they also break down pretty quickly in a totalitarian regime where the government loses credibility or relevance for the people because all power is exercised through force and violence instead of trust and consent. But in a healthy market economy, you're going to have courts, you're going to have some government regulatory agencies like the Federal Reserve Board that stabilizes interest rates among financial institutions. Locally, we're going to have things like a fire department and police that address emergency situations or help provide for public safety. You may not realize it, but fire departments and police lower the transaction costs for all the businesses in the area who don't have to necessarily cover all of those needs on their own. Legislatures are a type of obvious institution. Legislatures usually have in-house researchers that do legislative research or congressional research about policy proposals and things like that, evaluating them. One federal institution we have that is really a social institution just for reducing transaction costs and fostering the growth of our economy is the Library of Congress. So the Library of Congress doesn't really play a role in enacting laws or politics or choosing between parties. They're a repository for published books and volumes. But in that sense of having some sort of like central clearinghouse that has assigned a unique identification number to every publication in U.S. history and so forth, they have functioned as a vital institution in our society, even though you may have gone your whole life without really thinking about the Library of Congress. Or maybe you took a field trip to Washington, D.C. and visited the Library of Congress, did a little tour, but didn't really think about how much better off our economy and society is because of having an institution like that there. Now, I want to continue and talk about institutions in this quick overview and remind you that we're not just talking about government institutions like courts. And this is one problem I have sometimes with the materials that come from people who are just economists is when they talk about institutions, they tend to focus only on courts enforcing contracts and property rights and things like that, the Federal Reserve Board and a few other government institutions. But most of the institutions in our society are in the private sector. So we have corporations and firms, right? Big national law firms are businesses, they are market participants, but they also become institutions, especially multi-generational the corporations that last multiple generations. So it's not just the alter ego of one person. It's not just a person doing business as XYZ corporation, but it's an institution where people have had their careers and have known each other, and they've developed a brand and market reputation and things like that. There are trade associations and unions. Sometimes these function just as political entities or sort of networking organizations. But there are times where trade associations play actual valuable institutional roles in things like setting and coordinating standards and cooperation within the industry, or helping the industry overall improve its quality and productivity. There are also private standard setting institutions for certain industries that publish code books, or right, you may have heard of things like ISO with a bunch of numbers following it, or private entities that set standards for internet protocols. And we also have mainstream news media and large book publishers that are market participants, but they also become institutions over time. So I mentioned publishers. So, for example, some of the academic presses have played a vital role in collecting old books that were very important or influential in previous eras and that are long out of print, but that have a lot of historical value. And they will put out new collections or anthologies of these things, the collected works of William Shakespeare, for example. And even though a lot of these works are in the public domain, somebody has to make the investment of posting them and hosting them online in order for them to be available to everyone. So academic presses are valuable institutions in our society for keeping some of our collective wisdom going from generation to generation. And last but not least, we have private nonprofit institutions that also play a significant role in our society and our economy. And a lot of times economists don't like to think about nonprofits as part of the free market because they're really focused on profit seeking enterprises and businesses and so forth. But I'm going to give an example of churches and religious institutions are very important as kind of part of the not only the glue of holding communities together, but the grease of helping people meet each other and network and giving credibility and being a source of credibility. People use religious communities and institutions to find marriage partners and life partners, or to find someone they trust to tutor their children and so forth. Another really easy example is universities and colleges. Now, some of these are entities of the state, but they don't really run like a branch of government. If you went to a state university for your undergraduate, for example, it's a very different experience than interning at the legislature. So they are funded by the state. They're regulated to some extent by the state, but they are freestanding and they compete with each other to attract not only talented professors, but the highest credentialed students or highest performing students, and compete for donor dollars and contributors from alumni and so on. These universities and colleges, even though they're nonprofit, they function in some ways as market participants, but they also function as institutions in our society that provide very important credentialing for the labor market and setting standards. Research universities are very important sources for research and development of new technology and new discoveries and so forth. And also training and educating the workforce, helping not only in basic skills that they need, like job training, but also a lot of the socialization and social skills that are just as an essential component of being successful in the free market. And then there's the ones that are a little boring. You're less likely to hear a lecture about the vital role that these play in the economy, but these are things like public libraries or community libraries. A lot of them are freestanding nonprofit entities that rely on donations and sponsors and so forth. But libraries provide not only books that people can go and read, a lot of times they have computer terminals that give internet access to people who don't have it at home. They have lots of meeting rooms and study rooms and things like that. So libraries kind of become a hub of community activities in a lot of places, as do museums and galleries and symphonies. All of these are things that help people connect to the past and connect to the arts and to ideas and to meet like-minded people and coordinate and things like that. So if you are a member of a museum or a symphony, you know that they have special events that people go to, and you meet people that make valuable connections at these special events. You learn things, you find them enriching and so forth. So museums and symphonies and galleries do play a role in facilitating the functioning of a healthy market. And then last but not least, we have these things we call think tanks that are usually organized as nonprofits. Rand Corporation, the Heritage Foundation, Brookings Institute, and the Rockefeller Institute, who basically hire researchers who tackle either technical or industrial or sometimes policy conundrums and puzzles. Expert staff, a lot of times people with PhDs or master's degrees, who can take the time and invest in really researching something and figuring out solutions and proposals that, again, provide value to the larger society. And so we're going to talk about all of these things. We're going to talk about some of the internal economics of institutions and how they work. And then I'm going to pick out a few of these types of institutions to talk about how they interact with society. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.